I never imagined betrayal could sound so casual. 5 soft words, tossed over a shoulder like scraps. You need to get out, Tom. No anger, no hesitation. Just certainty, the kind people use when they decide you're no longer useful. I swear the air in the kitchen shifted, like the house itself was ashamed of what it just heard. That moment was the crack that started everything. The moment I stopped being Grandpa Tom and became a burden in my own home. A place I'd built with my hands, paid for with every hour of my working life, and quietly gifted to my family because I believed love was stronger than paperwork. Turns out, paperwork wins every time. Let me start from the beginning. I'm Tom, 71 years old, retired carpenter, widower, and until last month, I believe my granddaughter Lily still saw me as her safe place in this world. When her mother passed, she was only 10. I raised her like she was my own daughter, made lunches, braids, late-night tea during her heartbreaks. Everything. I never thought she'd grow into someone capable of looking at me with impatience instead of love. But maybe that change didn't happen overnight. Maybe I just refused to see it. It was a Saturday morning. Sunlight was leaking through the kitchen curtains the same way it had for 30 years. I was mixing pancake batter, Lily's favorite because I always added a bit of vanilla and she said it tasted like home. When she walked in with her husband, Mark. He's the kind of man who talks loudly about how hard he works but always seems to have soft hands. They exchanged a look before Lily cleared her throat. Tom, we've been talking, she began, rubbing her arm anxiously. It's time you maybe thought about living somewhere else. I remember blinking, thinking I heard wrong. Somewhere else? Why in the world would I move? Mark stepped forward like he'd been waiting for his cue. We just don't have the space anymore. The baby's coming and, well, you're not exactly helping with the bills or anything. Helping with the bills? I almost laughed. The bills for a house I'd owned outright for 2 decades before signing half of it over, so Lily and Mark could build their future. I still covered property taxes, insurance, maintenance, everything. But I never bragged about it. I just wanted them to have stability. Mark, I said slowly, what exactly do you think you contribute to this place? He straightened his shoulders. We're raising the next generation. That's contribution enough. I stared at Lily, searching for the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest during thunderstorms. But she wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Grandpa. It's just, we need privacy. And you being here is stressful. Stressful. Me, the man who changed every light bulb, fixed every leak, mowed every inch of the yard, cooked half the dinners. Where do you expect me to go? I asked quietly. There's a senior apartment complex near the mall, she said. They have openings. And independence is good for you. Independence. It felt like a slap. I'd lived independently my whole life. I taught her independence, and now she was using the word like a consolation prize. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't mention the paperwork or the property title or the fact that Lily had no idea the house wasn't legally hers yet. Not completely. She thought it was. Mark certainly did. But I'd kept a small, very important detail to myself all these years. I still held final ownership rights. They never asked. I never mentioned it. Maybe part of me always feared something like this could happen. So I did what they asked. I left the kitchen, left the pancake batter on the counter, walked upstairs, and started packing my things into 2 small suitcases. I didn't take much, just clothes, my tools, and the photo of Lily at age 10 wearing her mother's 2 big gardening gloves, grinning at me like I hung the moon. When I came downstairs, Mark was already carrying my old recliner toward the garage. We're donating this, he said. Well, it doesn't fit our aesthetic. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted metal. Lily walked me to the door with a polite but distant smile, the kind a stranger might give a delivery driver. Please don't make this harder than it is, she said softly. It's best for everyone. Best for everyone. I nodded, stepped outside, and closed the door behind me. But the moment the latch clicked, something inside me changed. Not anger, not yet, but a cold clarity I hadn't felt in years. A feeling that whispered, this isn't the end of your story. The next week I lived in a small rented room above a hardware store. Smelled like dust and paint thinner, but I'd slept in worse places. I spent those quiet nights going through old papers, deeds, tax records, contracts I hadn't looked at since Lily became an adult. And that's when I found it. The envelope, thick, yellowed, tucked behind the file cabinet. Inside was the original property agreement, the one Lily and Mark never bothered to read before signing. It clearly stated primary ownership remains with Thomas William Carter until his death. OR, written transfer of rights. I never signed that transfer. Lily didn't know. Mark definitely didn't know. But the universe must have known, because the next morning, as I stepped out of the hardware store, a young woman in a blazer approached me. "Sir, are you Thomas Carter? I'm from Suncrest Development. We're buying properties in your area. We're very interested in yours." Interested was an understatement. Her offer made me dizzy. 3 times what the house was worth when Lily moved in. I didn't say yes, not right away. I just smiled, took her card, and thought about Lily telling me there was no space for me anymore. Thought about Mark calling me a burden. Thought about a home that had become a place where my presence was tolerated instead of loved. That afternoon, I called her back, and the first domino fell. But the real trouble, the real story, began the moment Lily and Mark drove home a week later and saw the bright red for sale sign planted in the yard like a flag in the enemy territory. And they had no idea who put it there. I knew the exact moment Lily saw the sign. I wasn't there, not physically, but I swear I felt the echo of her scream all the way across town. A kind of sharp, panicked sound only someone who's suddenly losing something they assume they controlled can make. The realtor called me 5 minutes later, breathless with amusement. "Mr. Carter? Your granddaughter is... well, she's upset. They're demanding to know who listed the property." I leaned back on the thin mattress in my rented room and closed my eyes. "Tell them the owner did." "The owner? You?" "Yes," I said. "Me." There was a small, reverent silence on the line, the kind people have when they watch justice take shape. By the time Lily and Mark tracked me down, night had fallen. I heard their footsteps on the hardware store stairs long before they knocked. Heavy, frantic. Not the confident stomping Mark usually did around the house like he owned the floorboards. When I opened the door, Lily looked like she'd aged 5 years in a day. "Grandpa," she gasped, pushing past me into the room. "What did you do?" Mark followed her in, face red and sweaty. "This is insane, Tom. You can't just sell our house." I leaned against the dresser. "Your house? We live there," he snapped. "We pay the bills, I held up one finger. "Which bills exactly?" Mark froze. Lily swallowed. "Grandpa, please, you can't do this to us." I watched her, trying to find the girl I raised under all that panic, but all I saw was someone who'd only now realize bridges burn both ways. "Sit down," I said softly. They both sat on the edge of the bed, knees touching, hands wringing together. For a moment, I just let the silence stretch. Let them feel the weight of it. Then I reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out the envelope, the one yellowed by time, stamped with legal certainty. "This," I said, placing it gently in Lily's lap, "is the property agreement you and Mark signed before moving in." Mark snatched it, skimmed the first page, and his entire body went rigid. This must be outdated." "It isn't," I said, "and you'd have seen that if you'd ever bothered to look." Lily covered her mouth. "Grandpa, we didn't know. You said the house was ours." "I said you could make it your home," I corrected. "I never said you owned it." Mark threw the papers onto the bed. "So you tricked us?" "No," I said calmly. "You just made assumptions." Lily's voice cracked. "Why would you sell it? Why now?" A quiet, tired anger rose inside me, the kind that isn't loud, but sure. "Because you told me to get out." Lily's face broke. "I was stressed. I was pregnant. Mark and I were arguing and—" "Lily," I said, "I was standing in the kitchen making you pancakes. And you told me you didn't want me in my own home?" Her lip trembled. "I didn't mean forever." "That's the thing about words," I said gently. "Once spoken, they don't shrink. They only grow." Mark shot up. "This is ridiculous. You're being emotional. We need the house. The baby needs a room and—" I stood too, but slow, steady, the way storms build over the desert. "You had space, Mark. You chose to use it to push me out." He opened his mouth again, but Lily placed a hand on his arm. "Stop," she whispered. "Just stop." The girl I raised was resurfacing, fragile, ashamed. "Grandpa," she said softly, "can we fix this? Can we undo it?" Her voice cracked on the last word. I hesitated, not because I doubted my decision, but because a small part of me still loved her with the stubbornness only grandparents have. "The buyers have already signed the offer," I said, "and I've accepted." Lily inhaled sharply like the air had been punched out of her. "But where will we go?" she whispered. Mark added, "Yeah, Tom, where are we supposed to live?" "We?" I repeated. "You told me I didn't belong there. You told me to be independent, so I am." Mark's jaw clenched. "You're doing this on purpose, to punish us." I shook my head. "No, I'm doing this to protect myself, something I should have done sooner." Lily's eyes were wet now, but she didn't cry. Not yet. She just stared at me with a kind of dawning fear. "What happens when the buyers move in?" she whispered. "They already scheduled an inspection," I said. "Tomorrow." Mark made a strangled sound. That's impossible. We can't pack in a day." "That," I said, "is not my problem anymore." Silence swallowed the room whole. Finally, Lily whispered, "Grandpa, please, give us some time." I looked at her, really looked, and something strange happened. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel revenge. I felt tired. Tired of being the one everyone depended on until the day they didn't want me anymore. "I'll give you 1 week," I said quietly. "No rent, no conditions. Pack your things and go where your future takes you." Mark looked like he wanted to argue, but Lily grabbed his hand, shaking her head with a quiet plea. They stood. Lily paused at the door. "Grandpa, I'm sorry. Truly." Her voice wavered, but I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to decide how I felt. When the door closed behind them, the silence felt colder than before. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the old envelope resting on the blanket, thinking about how quickly love can turn into expectation. But this story wasn't done, not by a long shot, because the buyers had their own plans. And Lily and Mark were about to face a consequence they never saw coming. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I felt guilty. Guilt fades when you've been treated like furniture, but because something in my gut kept twisting, like the story wasn't finished with me yet. By sunrise, the desert sky was a pale wash of pink, and I was already dressed, sitting by the tiny window of my rented room above the hardware store. A part of me wondered how Lily and Mark spent their night. Packing boxes, arguing, pretending none of this was happening. Whatever it wasn't silence. I could feel that from miles away. At 10 sharp, my phone buzzed. "Mr. Carter, we're 10 minutes out." It was the realtor, and behind her, the couple who wanted my house. I made the drive back to my old neighborhood in my dusty little truck. When I turned onto the familiar street, I saw them immediately. A pristine white SUV, 2 people standing beside it, and Lily and Mark on the porch, looking like ghosts. Lily had puffy eyes. Mark looked furious, not at himself, never at himself, but at the situation which, in his mind, was conveniently my fault. "Mr. Carter," the realtor waved. Perfect timing. I parked slowly, stepped out, and closed my truck door with a soft click. The sound echoed. Even the birds seemed to pause. The buyers approached me with bright, polite smiles. A man in his 40s with sun-worn skin and a woman with sharp eyes and a clipboard. "Tom," the man said warmly, shaking my hand, "we're excited. This place is exactly what we were looking for." Lily's head snapped toward them. You're the people who want to buy the house?" The woman smiled. "We're the Millers. We love the neighborhood." Mark marched down the porch steps. "The house isn't for sale. He can't sell it." The husband and wife exchanged a look. "That's not what the paperwork says," the woman replied calmly. "We have an accepted offer." "Yeah?" Mark stepped closer, puffing himself up. "Well, we live here." The husband nodded slowly. "We were told you'd be moving out." Lily's voice cracked. We didn't know." The realtor shifted uncomfortably. "If it helps, we can give you space. But the inspection starts in 20 minutes. "We're not leaving," Mark barked. "You can't force us out like this." "Oh, Mark," I murmured softly. "Be careful. People who say can't usually mean don't want to." His face went red. The Millers stepped slightly behind me, the way people do when a dog they don't trust starts showing its teeth. Then the wife, the sharp-eyed one, asked, "Tom, could we have a quick word? Just you and us?" I nodded and stepped aside with them. The woman lowered her voice. "We didn't want to say anything until we met you in person, but we're buying more than just the house." I blinked. "What do you mean?" Her husband smiled. "We're not planning to move in, Tom. We want to restore the property and turn it into a historical showcase." What now?" The woman's eyes softened. "We read the original land documents. This place was built by hand. Your hand, right?" I nodded slowly. "We want to keep your work alive," she continued. "We want to preserve it exactly as you built it. We don't want to erase anything. We want your approval, and your story, to go with it." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Somewhere inside me, something warm flickered. Recognition, maybe, or gratitude. A feeling I hadn't felt since before my wife passed. "And," the husband added, glancing toward Lily and Mark, "we don't want anyone living here who doesn't respect what you made." I stared at him. He didn't say it loudly. He didn't need to. Behind us, Lily's voice rose in panic. "Grandpa, please just tell them we'll leave eventually. Don't do this to us. Not like this." I turned to see her standing at the porch steps, tears streaming, one hand protectively on her belly. Her voice trembled. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I shouldn't have told you to get out. I shouldn't have said half the things I did. I was scared and stupid and please. Don't take our home." My heart twisted. That was my Lily, the real one. Not the sharp-tongued stranger from the kitchen. Just a scared young woman who didn't know how to say she'd made a mistake. Before I could speak, Mark stepped in front of her like a shield. "Don't listen to her. We deserve this house. We built a life here." I met his eyes and saw nothing but entitlement. "You didn't build anything," I said quietly. "You lived in what was already done, and you forgot the difference." Mark scoffed. "Whatever. You're just being petty." "Petty?" I repeated. "Son, I left my home with 2 suitcases because you told me I wasn't worth the space I took up." He rolled his eyes. The husband beside me muttered, "Unbelievable." The wife crossed her arms. "Tom, we support your decision. Entirely." But I wasn't done. Not yet. I stepped closer to Lily. "You asked me not to make things harder." She nodded, tears falling. "And I won't," I said gently. "You have 1 week. I gave you that. I'll honor it." Relief washed over her face, until I added, "But after that, this place is no longer yours. And maybe it never really was." Mark muttered a curse under his breath. I straightened my back, slowly, painfully, but with a certainty I hadn't felt in years. "This isn't punishment," I told them. "This is consequence. You asked me to leave a home I built, a home I paid for, a home I opened to you out of love. And when you took that love for granted, I finally understood something." Lily looked up at me, trembling. "What?" "That I deserved the same independence you wanted so badly for me." Silence spread over the yard like a shadow. The Millers moved toward the house. The realtor followed. Lily stood frozen on the porch, one hand over her mouth, the other over her heart. But Mark wasn't finished. He stormed toward me, jabbing a finger in the air. "You'll regret this, old man. You think you're teaching us a lesson? You're just bitter and alone." I didn't move, didn't blink. "You think you hold all the power," he snapped. I shook my head slowly. "I don't have power, Mark. I have boundaries. You just never expected me to use them." But he wasn't hearing anything anymore. He was spiraling, loud, angry, red-faced. And then something happened I did not expect. The husband, the quiet-eyed buyer, stepped between us, calm but firm. "That's enough," he said. "Mr. Carter deserves respect. And if you don't give it, you can leave our future property right now." Mark opened his mouth. The buyer cut him off. "Get off the porch." And Mark actually stepped back. Because for the first time, he realized he wasn't the biggest man in the yard. As for Lily, she just sank onto the porch step and cried quietly, shaking, whispering apologies I wasn't ready to accept. Not yet. But part of me, the old soft part that raised her, still hurt watching her fold in on herself. Because the next twist was coming. One they didn't see. One I didn't see. Something was about to happen during the inspection. Something inside the house that would flip the entire situation again. I could feel tension crawling under my skin as we stepped inside the house for the inspection. Not the angry kind, the anticipatory kind. The kind a man feels when he knows life is about to reveal a truth he didn't ask for. The Millers walked ahead with the realtor, chatting softly, admiring the woodwork, trailing fingers along the banister I carved in '89. I followed a few steps behind, slower, letting the house breathe around me. Lily and Mark didn't come inside at first. Mark paced on the porch, still muttering. Lily finally slipped through the doorway like someone entering a church after years away, hesitant, apologetic, gut-deep guilty. The house felt different with them trailing behind me, heavy, like it had something to confess. The inspector was a tall guy with a clipboard and a flashlight clipped to his belt. He gave me a respectful nod. Real respectful, not the performative stuff. "Mr. Carter, beautiful home, built solid." "Thank you," I said, voice rougher than I meant. He started with the living room, tapping at baseboards, checking outlets. Nothing unusual. Then the kitchen, then the hallway. Everything was going fine until he stepped into the back room. A room Lily and Mark had claimed as storage. A room I hadn't been inside since the day I left. The inspector paused at the entrance. "Is this where you keep maintenance records, Tom?" "No," I said. "Those are in the shed." He frowned, stepped in, and the whole house seemed to tighten its grip around us. Because the back room wasn't storage anymore. It was a disaster. I don't mean messy, I mean trashed. Clothes, takeout boxes, piles of unopened mail, broken picture frames, empty beer bottles shoved against the wall, a spill of something sticky and sour seeping into the carpet. Lily gasped behind me. Mark froze. The inspector let out a soft, low whistle. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was in the corner. A pile of unpaid notices clipped together, property taxes, utility payments, insurance warnings, all addressed to me. My stomach dropped. I hadn't seen a single one. Not one. I paid those bills every month, on time, always. But the notices, they were stamped in red. Final warning. Immediate action required. The inspector looked over his shoulder. "Mr. Carter, these haven't been opened." Lily pressed her hand over her mouth. "Grandpa, we didn't know these were here." Mark stiffened, eyes darting. "This room is her responsibility, not mine." I turned toward Lily slowly. "Did you get the mail?" She nodded weakly. "Mark asked me to." "And did you open it?" She shook her head, trembling. "I was overwhelmed. The pregnancy, work. I stacked it in here. I kept forgetting." Mark hissed under his breath. "Are you serious, Lily? You told me—" She cut him off, voice cracking. "You told me you handled the bills. You said you paid everything online." The inspector stepped back, letting the words fall between them like bricks. Mark's face twisted. I didn't think it mattered. The house is yours." "Mine?" I whispered. It wasn't a loud sound. It didn't need to be. Mark swallowed. "I just figured, it'd sort itself out. You've always handled things. Always." Lily slid down the doorframe, shoulders shaking. "Grandpa, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to ruin anything. I just didn't know what to do." But she had ruined something. Not the sale. The Millers could handle unpaid bills. Not the inspection. The house itself was sound. What she ruined was the illusion. For years, I believed I lived with family who appreciated the roof over their heads. Instead, I'd lived with two people who treated responsibility like clutter, something to shove in a corner and hope it disappeared. The inspector cleared his throat. "Well, we should check the attic next." We all followed him upstairs. As we reached the landing, Lily touched my sleeve. "Grandpa," she whispered, I want to tell you something before you see it up there." My heart stumbled. "Up there?" She nodded. tears slipping silently down her cheeks. There's something else you need to know, something I should have told you months ago. I stared at her, confused. Lily, what are you talking about? She hesitated, then took a shaky breath. It's about Mom's things, she whispered. I didn't put them where I told you. They're not in storage. I stepped back slightly. My wife's things. The boxes I'd packed myself. Carefully, tenderly. The last pieces of the woman I loved more than life. Lily, I said slowly, what did you do? Her voice broke. I'm sorry, Grandpa. I'm so sorry. But before she could continue, the inspector opened the attic door, and everything changed, because the attic wasn't empty. It wasn't storage. It wasn't untouched. It was arranged, beautifully, intentionally, painstakingly. My wife's belongings, photographs, quilts, carved figurines, handwritten letters, were displayed like a museum exhibit, lit, dusted, lined up with care, but not by Lily. No. The inspector cleared his throat awkwardly. Mr. Carter, you might want to see this. I walked in slowly, heart thudding, breath thin, and there, standing near the center of the room, was a woman I hadn't seen in 15 years. Lily's aunt, my wife's sister, the one who disappeared after the funeral and never came back. She turned, eyes soft but scarred. Hello, Tom, she said quietly. I was wondering when you'd find out I moved in. I didn't recognize her at first, not because she'd changed, though she had, but because my mind refused to believe what my eyes were seeing. She stood there in the attic's soft light, thin, pale, hair streaked with gray, wearing one of my late wife's old cardigans like armor. But it was the eyes, soft, bruised by life, yet painfully familiar. Marilyn, I whispered. She nodded once, small, almost apologetic. I'm sorry, Tom. I didn't know how else to come back. My knees nearly buckled. The attic seemed to sway. For a second, I felt Lily's hand grip my arm to steady me, then let go quickly, like she wasn't sure she still had that right. I thought you left the state, I managed. I thought you wanted nothing to do with us. Marilyn closed her eyes, shoulders trembling. It wasn't you. It was me. After Annie died, I couldn't breathe in this house. I couldn't look at the photos, the kitchen, her garden. Everywhere I turned, she was still here, and I wasn't strong enough to stay. Her voice cracked on the last word. I stared at her, at my wife's sister, a woman who'd vanished like a ghost and left us to grieve without her. But here she was, standing in the middle of the attic like a piece of my past resurrected. Lily finally stepped forward, voice small. I didn't put Mom's things in storage. I gave them to Marilyn. She asked for them. She came secretly while you were at the store or in the workshop. She said she just needed somewhere quiet to sort through them. I looked from Lily to Marilyn. You've been living up here? Marilyn nodded, not ashamed, just tired. For months, she whispered. I didn't have anywhere else, and this room felt like Annie was close. I swallowed hard, a burn rising in my throat. My wife's name in someone else's mouth always hit like a punch. The inspector cleared his throat awkwardly and backed out. Even the realtor ushered the Millers downstairs, giving us space. The attic door clicked shut. Suddenly it was only the three of us, me, Lily, and the ghost, who wasn't a ghost after all. Mark's voice echoed faintly from downstairs, furious and confused, but it felt distant, like the universe had muted him on purpose. I took a slow breath. When were you going to tell me? Marilyn looked at her feet. Never, probably. I thought you'd hate me for leaving, and I definitely thought you'd hate me for coming back. I don't hate you, I said quietly. I just don't understand. She gave a soft, sad smile. You were always the strong one, Tom. When Annie died, you held everyone together. I was the coward. I ran. Her eyes glistened. But I came back because I missed her, and you, and Lily. At her name, Lily winced. Grandpa, she whispered, wiping tears. I didn't know she was staying up here at first. She told me she just needed a place to be close to Mom's things. But then she didn't leave. And you didn't tell me, I said. Lily nodded, guilt swallowing her whole. I was afraid you'd be angry, and I thought Mark would make fun of her, or call her a freeloader, or worse. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. Sounds familiar. She closed her eyes, pain twisting her expression. And then Marilyn spoke again, voice trembling. I heard everything, Tom. Every fight, every slammed door, every cruel comment. He wanted you out of your own house. Her voice grew tight. He wanted this place, your history, Annie's memory, everything. And Lily, she was drowning in it. Lily's breath hitched. Marilyn. No, Marilyn said gently, touching her niece's arm. You need to hear this too. She turned back to me. Tom, they weren't just careless with the house. They were careless with each other, and with you. But I didn't know how to help. I was hiding, like I always did. Her voice broke completely. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm sorry for running, for coming back the wrong way, for hiding in the attic like a ghost. I didn't know what home was anymore. Silence settled between us, the heavy kind, the real kind, the kind that carries too many years in it. Finally, I exhaled. So this, I said softly, gesturing around us. This isn't a mess. This is a shrine. Marilyn nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I built it for her, for us, for everything I lost. I sank slowly onto an old crate, my wife's quilt folded beside it. I ran my hand over the familiar stitching. It felt like touching her hand again. Lily knelt beside me. Grandpa, I'm sorry for everything, for pushing you out, for not respecting what this house meant, for not seeing you. Her voice cracked. I thought I was overwhelmed, but really, I was selfish. I didn't speak, not yet, not because I didn't forgive her, but because forgiveness needs breath before it forms. Then Marilyn wiped her eyes and said the one thing I never expected. Tom, maybe you shouldn't sell the house. The words hit like a stone thrown into still water. Lily's head snapped toward her. What? But Grandpa already... Marilyn shook her head. If anyone should decide the fate of this home, it's Tom. Not fear, not anger, not pressure, and not regret. Her eyes met mine, steady for the first time since she appeared. Tom, do you really want to let strangers take Annie's house? Or are you just trying to protect yourself because you feel unwanted? My throat tightened, my chest ached, because she was right, painfully right. For the first time in weeks, I didn't know the answer. Downstairs, Mark started shouting again, his voice climbing, unraveling. The Millers were responding calmly, but firmly. Something crashed. The floorboards shook. Lily flinched. Marilyn stiffened. I stood. Because whatever was happening downstairs, it wasn't just noise. It was the sound of something breaking, something that had been cracking for a long time. And when I reached the top of the attic stairs, I heard Mark roar. This house is mine whether he likes it or not. And then a scream, high, terrified. Lily's. The kind of scream that makes a man forget his age, forget his aches, forget everything except getting downstairs now. And I realized the house wasn't done with us. Not yet. I hit the stairs faster than a 71-year-old man has any business moving. My knees protested, my hips cracked. But fear pushed me downward like gravity had doubled. Lily's scream was still ringing in my ears, sharp, panicked, full of a terror I hadn't heard from her since she was a little girl afraid of thunderstorms. When I reached the bottom step, the scene hit me like a punch. The living room was chaos. The Millers stood near the doorway, tense but composed. The realtor hovered behind them, pale and useless. Marilyn was gripping the banister halfway down the stairs, breath fast and shaky. And in the center of the room, Lily stood pressed against the wall, hand over her stomach, eyes wide and wet. Mark towered in front of her, face twisted, hands clenched at his sides, not touching her, but far, far too close. Mark, I said quietly. My voice was low, calm, the kind that comes right before lightning strikes. He turned toward me, eyes wild. She's overreacting. I wasn't going to hurt her. Lily let out a shaky sob. You grabbed my arm. Oh, please, he snapped. I didn't even squeeze. You don't raise your voice to a pregnant woman, the Miller husband said sharply, stepping forward. Ever. Mark rounded on him. Stay out of this. You're not even part of this family. The Miller's eyes narrowed with a calm, steady kind of anger I respected immediately. After what I just heard, I'd say I have more of a right to protect her than you do. Mark laughed, a short, ugly sound. Oh yeah? You two don't get a say. This is my house and you... Your house? I cut in. Mark turned to me, chest heaving. Yes, mine. I've been patient with you, Tom, but enough is enough. You're senile if you think paperwork gives you control. I live here. Lily and I built a life here. You don't get to tear it apart because you're lonely and bitter, Lily gasped. Mark, stop! No, he barked, jabbing a finger at her. You said we were on the same page. I said, she whispered, voice trembling, that I was scared of being overwhelmed. I never said I wanted him gone forever. She told me, Mark snapped at me, that you guilt-tripped her, manipulated her, made her feel trapped. I never, Lily started, but Mark cut her off again. And now you're trying to sell the house out from under us? You think I'll let you do that? You think I'll let you ruin everything I've worked for? I stared at him, really stared. What exactly had he worked for? He hadn't paid a single bill, hadn't fixed a pipe, hadn't watched Lily cry in the kitchen when the pregnancy symptoms hit hard. He'd simply existed, loudly, while the rest of us tried to hold the house together. Mark, I said softly, step away from her. He smirked. Or what? You'll call the police? Go ahead, tell them an old man is upset he lost control. Lily's voice cracked. Mark, please. I'm the one with something to lose here, he shouted. The baby needs a home. The baby needs peace, Marilyn said, stepping off the stairs with more courage than I ever saw in her. And a father who doesn't scream at its mother. Stay out of this, he snarled. No, I said. She won't. The room went quiet. Mark turned to me with a sneer. You think you're the head of this family? You think you can throw your weight around because you're old and sentimental? You think... I stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. Mark, I said, I don't need to throw my weight around. His lip curled. Oh, really? And why's that? Because the law already agrees with me. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. Then irritation. Then something uglier. Panic. What does that mean? He demanded. The realtor cleared her throat softly. It means the house legally belongs to Tom. Fully, completely. You never had ownership rights. Mark stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. That's impossible. It's not, the Miller wife said, pulling a printed copy of the deed from her folder. This was part of the sale packet. You really should have read it. She handed it to him. Mark snatched it, scanned the first line, and his entire expression collapsed. Lily closed her eyes, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. You've got to be kidding me, Mark whispered. You tricked me. No, I said. You assumed. He shook his head. No, you can't do this. Lily, tell him this is your house too. Lily lifted her head. Her shoulders straightened, her voice steadied. It isn't. Mark froze. This house was a gift, she said quietly. A privilege, and we treated it like something we deserved. Her breath trembled. And you treated my grandfather like he was in your way. Lily, Mark pleaded, I love you. I'm just stressed. We can fix this. No, she whispered. We can't. A silence fell, cold and final. Mark's face twisted in desperation. You're choosing him over me, over our family? Lily stepped back from him, hand protectively over her belly. I'm choosing our baby, and peace, and safety, and respect. Mark looked like a man drowning. No, he choked. No, you can't do this. You need me. She shook her head slowly. I used to think so. Now I know better. The final thread snapped inside him. I saw it happen. In his shoulders, in his eyes, in the ugly set of his jaw. You're all insane, he muttered. I'm not leaving. The Miller husband stepped beside me. Yes, you are. Mark stiffened. The husband's voice dropped, controlled, cold. Because I just recorded the last 5 minutes on my phone. including you yelling at a pregnant woman, refusing to leave her property, and threatening the homeowner. Mark's mouth opened, closed, opened again. And, the wife added, I already texted it to our attorney. He'll have no trouble filing for a restraining order. That was it. The fight drained out of Mark's face. His shoulders slumped. His breath came ragged. Then, without another word, he stormed out the front door, slamming it behind him. Silence settled across the house. Lily trembled. Then she crumpled onto the couch, sobbing into her hands. Marilyn rushed to her side. The Millers stepped back respectfully. The realtor exhaled shakily. And I stood there, staring at the door, feeling something strange inside me. Not triumph, not victory, just relief. Lily looked up at me through tears. Grandpa, she whispered, voice broken. What do I do now? Her voice wasn't defiant or selfish or demanding. It was the voice of the terrified little girl I once carried down these stairs during a thunderstorm. I walked over slowly and knelt beside her, knees cracking, heart softening. Now, I said gently, you let me help, but only if you're ready to rebuild the right way. She nodded, sobbing harder. I'm so sorry for everything. I placed a hand on her shoulder. I know, but the house, the sale, the future, none of it was settled yet. Because what the Millers said next would change everything again. The wife stepped forward, clearing her throat softly. Tom, she said, about the sale, we need to talk. I stood slowly. What about it? She exchanged a look with her husband, a long one, heavy one, and then said, We're withdrawing our offer. The room went still. Lily gasped. Marilyn stiffened. Even the realtor swayed. I blinked. You... what? The wife smiled, warm, almost fond. We're not here to take your home, Tom. The husband nodded. We're here to give you a choice. And then he extended an envelope. Inside was something I never expected. A proposal that wasn't just about the house, but about saving my family. I held the envelope like it was something alive, not heavy, but meaningful. Every eye in the room was on me. The Millers, Lily, Marilyn, even the realtor who suddenly looked like she'd stumbled into a movie she didn't have permission to watch. I opened it slowly. Inside was a simple document, a single page, hand-signed. Offer withdrawn unless the owner chooses to reinstate. Below it, a second line. We propose an alternative arrangement. Tom Carter retains ownership. The house remains in the Carter family. We provide full restoration funding. No purchase necessary. I stared at it, confused. I don't understand. The wife took a soft breath. Tom, we came here thinking this place was abandoned by the people who should have cherished it. But after what we saw today, she glanced toward Lily, then toward Marilyn. This house means something, not to us, to you. Her husband nodded. We don't want to own it. We want to help restore it. You built something worth preserving, and your family still has a chance to fix what's broken. I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't a business pitch. It was mercy. But I didn't accept it, not yet. So what's the catch? I asked quietly. No catch, the wife said. Only one condition. She looked straight into my eyes. You stay. Silence fell over the room, thick, heavy, healing. Lily made a soft, choked sound. Grandpa, please, don't leave again. I looked at her, really looked. Not the frightened woman caught between loyalty and fear, not the stressed young mother-to-be who pushed me away, but the girl who once ran barefoot across this living room, holding my hand and begging me to chase her. Lily, I said softly, staying means this house becomes a home again. That depends on you. She wiped her eyes, but her voice was steady. I'll prove it. Every day, if I have to. Marilyn stepped forward then, the quiet ghost who'd lived in my attic. I'll help too, she whispered, if you'll have me. I'm tired of running, Tom. I felt something loosen inside me, something I didn't even know was clenched. Forgiveness isn't a door you slam open. It's a hinge that moves slowly, creaking 1 inch at a time. I turned to the Millers. What do you want in return? I asked. The husband smiled. A story. A story? Yes, the wife said softly. Yours, Annie's, this house's story. We want to preserve it for the historical archive we're building. We want to interview you, record the memories, document how you built this place with your own hands. That's the deal. I felt the breath leave my body. They didn't want to buy my house. They wanted to honor it, honor her. I looked around the room, at the walls my wife had painted, the beams I had carved, the life we'd built and nearly lost. And I knew my answer. All right, I said quietly. Let's do it. Lily let out a broken sob of relief and threw her arms around me. For a moment, I didn't move. Then I wrapped her close, feeling her shake against me like she was 10 years old again. I'm sorry, she whispered into my chest. I'll spend the rest of my life making this right. You don't have to, I murmured. Just don't lose yourself again. Behind us, Marilyn smiled through tears. I'll move into the guest room. The attic was never meant to be a home. The realtor exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. Well, this is the first time I've ever cried during a property dispute. The Millers packed their things, shook my hand one last time, and left with quiet respect. They didn't take anything with them except the promise of a story, one I'd finally be strong enough to tell. When the door closed behind them, Lily whispered, "Grandpa, what about Mark?" I sighed. The afternoon sun filtered through the windows, falling across the old wooden floors. For the first time in weeks, the house felt warm again, like it remembered what it was supposed to be. Mark made his choices, I said gently. Now we make ours. She nodded slowly. There was pain in her eyes, the kind that doesn't heal overnight, but there was strength too, and that was enough. I walked into the kitchen, the room where this whole disaster started. The pancake bowl was still there, fossilized batter clinging to the whisk, a moment frozen in time. I washed it out, quietly, methodically. Then I pulled eggs from the fridge, flour from the cabinet, vanilla from the shelf. Lily stood in the doorway, hand on her stomach, watching me. "You cooking?" she asked softly. I smiled. "Always." She came over, rested her head against my shoulder. "Grandpa?" she whispered. "Yeah, sweetheart? Can we start over?" I stirred the batter, inhaled the smell of vanilla, and felt something settle in my chest that had been rattling loose for far too long. "We already did," I said. Because sometimes a family breaks, sometimes it splinters, sometimes it forgets the shape it used to take, but sometimes, if you're lucky, if you're patient, if you're willing to stay when it would be easier to disappear, a family can be carved again, rebuilt, restored, not perfect, but real, just like this house, just like us.